this is absolutely crazy. To suggest that the BBC is not woke enough, not diverse enough, I mean, come on. I mean, they spend millions on millions and seem to put all of their energy into trying to be as diverse as possible. But this guy doesn't think that they're diverse enough. And, you know, whatever happened to that old saying, judge people by the content of their character and not the colour of their skin? Who cares if there are white people in your office? If they deserve that job and they worked hard for it, they have the right to be there. This is Britain. Who is surprised if there are British people who look British in Britain? I mean, why is that surprising? Why does that damage your mental health? What?
I have no idea. The bloke obviously has mental health issues and shouldn't be on the air. Maybe he needs some help.
Perhaps you said it, not me.
Well, I mean, if he's mentally affected by having a white person...
Has he expanded on it since he said that? I mean, what mental issues is it giving him?
I don't think so. I mean, the way he's expanded on it is saying that, you know, that if you have to walk into your workplace and be surrounded by people who don't look like you...
I get that every time I come in here.
That's very distressing.
It is, actually. Yeah.
If you find that distressing, then... Yeah.
I find it distressing if people look like me when I came to work.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is at the moment that organisations like the soon-to-be defunct BBC, it won't last much longer, are going on about diversity. And unfortunately, the NHS as well have got into this trap too. And they continue to go on like this. They're, as we've been talking about on the programme tonight, going to go... We're going to cause more racism in this country than we've had for years. Yeah. Years.
Well, it's not, you know, not future tense. This is present.
It's happening, isn't it?
But it will get worse. That's the trouble.
It will get worse. It is just a new type of racism. We've just changed who we're racist towards. You know, maybe in the past we were racist towards ethnic minorities, but now we've switched it around. We're racist towards black people. I was reading through Nigel Rees, who left the BBC, his reasons for leaving, and he was talking about how the BBC, when they are casting for roles, they will actively exclude white people.
Do you actually feel... I mean, this whole
you
thing...
had that, didn't you?
Yeah. The whole thing... No. The whole thing about diversity and, OK, well, we've got to get a person that ticks a box. Either has to be...
radio, at BBC Radio.
Shush. Either has to be female or of a different culture. And they will get preference over somebody who might be very good at the job if they're the wrong colour.
Which is racist.
Now, isn't that racist?
No, yeah.
It's the definition of racism.
It is racism, or sexism if you're excluding males.
Yeah.
It's completely unacceptable. And, you know, so you've got me here tonight to come talk to you. If you told me, Chloe, we've brought you in because, you know, we couldn't find any other females and we've got to tick the box, you know, I wouldn't feel like I deserve to be here, would I?
No.
That's not why we got you here.
And with you know, university applications. I mean, it's everywhere really. I can bring up any example. University applications. You know, how do you feel if you know, you got into Harvard or whatever university, but the reason that you got there was because, you know, you were an ethnic minority and you were just ticking a box. You didn't actually really deserve to be there.
Well, that happens all over the place.
But isn't that becoming racist against white people, young white guys?
Absolutely, it is. And you know, I think it's crazy now how people feel like if they're white and they, you know, went to a private school, had any kind of privilege, that they feel like they're at a huge disadvantage and they won't be able to get a job whatsoever.
The working class as well, they'll suffer the worst, the white working class.
Yeah, exactly. When we're looking at positive discrimination, the idea of it is to, you know, help give a little bit of a leg up to people who had a more difficult start. But the way we're going about it is, rather than, say, choosing people who were genuinely in hardship in their upbringing, we're just going off skin colour. Somebody who grew up in a mansion and millionaire parents who is an ethnic minority will get priority over, you know, white British working class kid who grew up on a council or something.
Should they get a chance at the BBC? Because a lot of it is middle class black kids, isn't it, that get jobs at the BBC? Do they help actually black working class kids? Because they're probably as worse off as white working class kids.
Yeah, I'm sure when they're
because they just separate on colour. They don't look at the class.
They do. They separate on colour. I'm sure.
Chloe, You know,
But
when you're
privileged middle class, you know, people of colour, aren't there?
I'm going to go and sit in the control room and sort them out in a moment if you carry on like this.
But they're just
Ash, shut your mouth.
I'm just developing my point. I'm just developing it.
Come and get rid of him, because there are other people on this station who ask such long bloody questions.
Do you know what I mean, though, don't you?
Tune in, though.
Yeah.
Well, for him, I doubt it.
They only help us certain...
Could you have asked a question?
But she knows what I mean.
Would you allow her to answer the question first?
Answer the question, please, Chloe.
Sorry, Chloe, if he gets too annoying, and I like the way you shut him down when you raised your voice, you did a good job, but he's not
now you're
altogether
going
here.
Anyway, yes, they do seem to discriminate far more on colour than they do on class. Now, yes, if they are actively choosing...
And sex?
Yes, and sex as well. Yes, if they're actively choosing black candidates, some of those will be middle class, some of those will be working class. But yeah, they don't really seem to be choosing on the metrics that matter. Exactly. I don't mind a tiny bit of positive discrimination. So I'll give an example of positive discrimination I find acceptable. So my university they will give you a contextualised GCSE score when assessing your application. So you get a contextualised GCSE score that judges your GCSEs relative to those of the other kids in your school. I'm okay with that.
That's not right. It should be just how you did in the exam.
I never got any of those qualifications, so I can't really answer.
Now you get help.
They don't just look at the contextualised GCSE score. But I mean, for example, right, I don't want to brag, but I
feel free. You, Chloe,
I got 11 A stars at a school where less than half of the children, so 47% of the children, were able to achieve 5 C's at GCSE. It's fair to say I had to do all of the work myself versus kids at a top private school who would have had a lot more help. I'm not saying that those kids at a top private school, that their work should be discredited. I'm sure they worked very hard as well. But, you know, I think it's okay to give a tiny bit more credit to someone who did something good in a very bad situation.
So does that mean that we're looking down on white privilege? But it is a slippery slope.
You see, because that comes out of the
because a guy who could have worked very, very hard, it wasn't, or her, have to be politically correct, or her, or they, or it, or whatever.
I call my friends that are girls. I call them guys all the time. Like, hey guys,
is a good, exactly. Yeah. But you know, a lot of kids who went to a public school, not their fault, their parents are wealthy, and they suddenly get into a situation where they are not going to be, you know, if you went to, what do they call them, secondary? Oh, you see, I hardly ever went to school. Because I'm totally
feral child.
I'm totally
running around the hills.
He failed the 11 plus.
I failed the 11 plus, and they went down. And look who's the so it is very difficult. I mean, I left school thinking I was just completely stupid, and some people still think that, but I don't really care anymore. It is a problem if you perhaps were treated well. I went to a secondary modern school. I had ordinary middle-class parents, which, of course, everybody looks down on now. And I didn't go to a private school. If I had gone to a private school, maybe some of the educational problems I had would have been noticed. Who knows? Then I probably wouldn't be doing this job, so it wouldn't have been as good. But I think to sort of condemn in some way these kids who come from a wealthy family who are just as clever, for them it must be very upsetting.
Yeah, absolutely. It is just horrible to force somebody out of a job just because they happen to be born into a wealthy background. I mean, some people think that it sounds a bit pretentious, but I do think it's unfair to discriminate against someone because, you know, it's not their fault. It's not their fault that they were born into a wealthy family, just as it's not your fault if you were born into a poor family.
That goes against what you just said before. That you should judge people from that and give them more advantage if they did come from a worse a harder background.
So I'm saying that you should take into consideration to a small degree,
the same thing,
with a pinch of salt. Okay, this person's work is particularly impressive because they got perfect grades in a really difficult school, let's say. That doesn't mean that I should only take in people from that background, or I should give a huge weighting to it. I'm just saying you should take things into consideration, but this should be a small consideration, and you should never actively discriminate against people just because they had a privileged background.
Yeah, you shouldn't discriminate against anyone, really, for any reason.
No, if you apply for a job, it should be the best person to do the job for whatever reason.
Absolutely, and, you know, going back to this this BBC guy. Who cares if there are white people in your office? If they worked for that job and they deserve that job, they should be there.
You see, I don't like this Asian network, really, because I don't understand why there should be a network for Asians and not ones for Welsh or for Scottish, well, they're or I don't know, anywhere you come from, Greeks, or why on earth have the BBC decided to have an Asian network but no other network for any other minority group?
I have no idea.
Because you wouldn't get a job there, nor would I or you, would we?